when is the Clarity Act going to get passed? That's the big question. That's what all of us crypto investors want to know. What's holding everything back? And really it's classic politics right here. What I think is going to happen ultimately is that we're going to see this push through. I'm fairly certain. I'm probably about 75% certain it's going to be pushed through before the recess. What they're trying to do now is they're working in back rooms, trying to get enough Democrats to agree to vote for this, because there's going to be a lot of public pressure to vote for this as well. But there's a lot of other things going on right now. Obviously, you got the Iran war, you got sanctions on Russia that they want to get done. There's like 75 nominees they want to get moved forward as well. And they're doing all this. That's kind of in the limelight. It's ahead of the Clarity Act right now. And we have until August for the recess here. I think it's early August, might be like around the 12th or so of August, that the Senate takes a recess. So this really needs to get pushed through now, because if it doesn't, it's going to delay it till at least the end of the year. And then we might have lame duck people in the House, although the House already did pass the Clarity Act. But what ultimately needs to happen is that the Senate needs to pass it, and their version needs to be coordinated go back to the House, who's on recess now. And I believe they're back in September, if I recall right. So that would be fine, because the House will come back, reconcile with the Senate bill, match that up. Then it will go to the president's desk to be passed and put into law. The biggest thing we have right now, the biggest issue, is the Senate. But if it gets passed in the Senate, you're going to see euphoria in the crypto space, and also from a lot of the banks, because the banks have shifted their tune on this. Remember, they were against this a couple of months ago, and really back in January, when they pushed back hard against it, because they were worried about losing a lot of their deposits to stable coins, because stable coins were going to be able to generate good interest revenue for people who put money into that, as opposed to just a regular old savings or checking account. And the banks want that, right? They want to make sure they have that. And their fears were unfounded, because even with the passing of the Stablecoin Act last year, I think it was last May, the number of deposits actually went up in banks. So it didn't go up in stablecoins. So their fear is unfounded. And at this point, you really have a lot of people in a lot of the big banks. We got also a lot of the hedge funds that are really pushing for this Clarity Act, because there needs to be some structure so that there's certainty, and then investors will then follow suit, put money into the market, into these different ETFs and different programs. And remember, banks are now allowed to custody and hold crypto, Bitcoin and others. They're just a little slow to the game to do it. So you're going to see right now the merger of TradFi, traditional finance, with DeFi, decentralized finance, coming and merging together. This is going to be the start of the new financial system. And the Clarity Act is the big push to do it. And I do believe it's going to happen. Again, I said I'm about 75% certain. I'm actually more closer to 90% certain, because when it seems like it's not going to get done and you don't hear much about it, you hear everything negative, generally they'll just end up jamming it and pushing it through. There's too much big money that fund these politicians, these senators, these House of Representative people, to make sure they do pass this bill, because they're going to be able to make, Wall Street's going to be able to make a lot of money off of the cryptos and the Clarity Act. So you have Larry Fink, BlackRock's CEO, said the crypto washout is over. You have the CEO of Goldman Sachs pushing for this to be passed. Even JP Morgan, to an extent, is now pushing it to be passed. Jamie Dimon, even if Jamie Dimon, you remember, is one of the big people pushing against it in January and fighting against Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase. But this is going to get done. And let's look at some of the positive developments that could really help push it up. Obviously, when Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, said that the Clarity Act is at the 1 yard line, and he's right with this, in that they're almost all the way set to push this through. They've just got to make sure they get at least 10 or 11 votes from Democrats to pass this. When this was brought forward to the House of Representatives, this was a very bipartisan passing of this bill, and it was consensus. But in the Senate, it's definitely more partisan. It's definitely more difficult to get things done. And there's a lot more money involved with it when it comes to the Senate, and there's a lot less senators. So you need 60 votes, and right now they have 50, and that includes Marble-mouthed Mitch McConnell, who we don't even know if he's coherent or alive or what's going on with him. So we have that issue. And of course, Lindsey Graham had passed too. So we've got to make sure we've got enough senators to be able to vote yes on this to move it forward. And we got hopefully enough on the Republican side, or everybody hopefully on the Republican side. There could be a couple of holdouts there, but I think they'll be pushed through and Trump will really strong arm them. And hopefully a lot of Democrats come up on board and get over their Trump derangement syndrome and pass this for the good of the people, for the good and good of the market. Because if they don't, the market's really going to struggle, and not just the crypto market, but the stock market. Because the stock market really wants a lot of what's going on in crypto, and they know that AI and crypto will go together and they'll be merging together. When you have AI agents can't open bank accounts. They can't operate out of bank accounts. However, they can operate with crypto. You can give your AI agent a wallet, small amount of money, and tell them to do tasks for you and buy things for you. And they could do it with crypto, and they cannot do it with a bank. So this is very, very important. There's a lot of money behind this. That's why I feel it's going to be passed. The Genius Act was last year. That was a stablecoin act. So that one already passed, but that will tie together with the Clarity Act for sure. And remember, we are now behind other countries because Japan just passed their version of the Clarity Act. So did South Korea, and so did Russia. And, we're trying to put sanctions against Russia, and Putin was ahead of the game. He got their version of the Clarity Act done. So they got now a workaround around sanctions. They don't have to worry about what we sanction them. They can use the crypto market. So there's a lot of other ones that Australia, Vietnam, France, some of these other ones that are trying to create bills. They're trying to create Bitcoin reserves. And we have a lot of that stuff going on. These are all bullish. But I want to tell you the most important thing with Bitcoin. There was over 270,000 Bitcoin purchased by Bitcoin whales. Essentially means you own 1,000 or more Bitcoin. That institutes a Bitcoin whale. And they bought in around 59,000. That happens to be when I bought mine too. I think that's when the smart money got in, figuring that's probably either near or at the low of Bitcoin. And now we are just waiting. I think when Clarity Act gets passed, you're going to see a really nice boost. And it could end up being a turbo boost. It could be an initial boost when passed, then a little bit down, because generally Bitcoin does go down in August before it goes back up in September. But when the House reconvenes in September and they work out everything on the Clarity Act and gets passed, goes to the president's desk and gets signed into law, then I think you're going to see everything really move forward. Potentially, this is potentially, not investment advice here, it could go parabolic, not just Bitcoin. Really more the altcoins will go parabolic than Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin was already given its designation by the SEC before that it is basically personal property. It is not a financial instrument that needed SEC guidance. So that one was already decided on. And then you have the FTCC. Both those said if the Senate doesn't act, they'll act on their own, which will help the institutions anyway. It's just they'd much rather prefer this to go through, pass the law, pass the legislation, and it's just more clean that way. Let's look at some of the countries that either have Bitcoin treasuries or are developing one. We know that the United States has that. We know that El Salvador has had it. We know that Bhutan has also had it. And France is developing one, which is very interesting. It's one of the few countries. That one doesn't surprise me at all. The rest of the EU, they're way behind the ball and way out of this game right now. The BTF, the Bitcoin ETF outflows was pretty strong in June, especially. And it's improved a lot. I mean, look at this, right? We had 8 consecutive weeks of outflows. That's a record streak, 8.2 billion out. And then we had suddenly in July a turn more bullish, right? I think that's part people thinking that the Clarity Act is going to be passed. And I think that's a lot of positive news there for Bitcoin. Generally, Bitcoin does go up around 7% in July most years. And it's gone up solidly so far in July. Now it's stagnating between, say, 64 and 66 in that range right now. So let's look at some of the firms that are backing the bill. BlackRock, obviously a big player. Fidelity, they've been pro crypto for a long time. Franklin Templeton, Goldman Sachs, SoFi, they've all urged passage. Coinbase, Circle, Ripple. Obviously, there's a lot of ones out there. So the ones that are opposing it, JP Morgan is still somewhat at odds. It's really over the stablecoin yield, but they want it passed as well. But they were the biggest ones. Jamie Dimon was the biggest one complaining about the stablecoin yield. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, these dinosaurs are worried about it as well. And they have nothing to worry about. And they'll actually get a lot more business once this is passed. They just don't realize it yet. So you look how the House of Representatives passed it 294 to 134. Senate Banking Committee passed 15-9, but we need, like I said, we need to get rid of get past the partisan politics and get this passed. This will definitely help tremendously the markets, really not just the crypto market, but the stock market. So it's super important we get this bill passed. I do think we're almost there. Scott Bessent said the 1 yard line, meaning they got a few arms a twist to really talk people into doing this and getting it done. We know there are senators that just will vote no regardless because they can't stand Trump, or they're big with Bank of America and Wells Fargo and Elizabeth Warren being the case. Like, she is tied in with them. That's where she gets a lot of money. So she's going to be a no regardless. Doesn't matter what happens unless they change. If you also see JP Morgan or Bank of America or Wells Fargo shift and say, let's pass this, Elizabeth Warren will probably vote yes. Because if she doesn't, they might strong arm her and say they're going to pull funds from her. So I think we're there. Most people don't think we're there. I know Polymarket was under 50% or right in around there. Same with Kalshi, these betting markets. And that actually makes me feel good. I actually feel it's more likely to pass when the public sentiment is like that. That is very negative. Generally, that's when these things do get passed. We will see. See if it actually does happen. Knock wood. Hopefully it does. And we'll all be happy. And then the altcoins will start taking off. All right, guys. Catch you next video.